Cool. So I said we're talking about catalysts. So just to give you a little bit of context, I'm going to have Jake throw the definition of that up on the screen for us. So let's read. Catalyst is a substance that enables a chemical reaction to proceed at a usually faster rate or under different conditions than otherwise possible. So it allows you to proceed at a usually faster rate or under different conditions that are otherwise impossible. It makes the impossible possible. So when I think about the word catalyst, immediately I always see pictures in my brain when people talk. I'm just running a movie mostly. And I see, you know that whole experiment where you can put a Mentos in a 2-liter bottle of Pepsi and just you watch it explode? Has anyone ever seen that? Tell me. Yes, you have. Okay, cool. So if you haven't, you're right now thinking about that experiment. Okay, stop. Okay, because I'm going to give you something else to think about. Like, you can do it, just don't do it inside your house. Just do it at the beach or something. But you put Mentos, which is something we put in our body, but when it mixes with that soda, it explodes in a crazy way. So when I hear the word catalyst, I think about, there was a time I was in a hotel room, and brand new hotel, brand new. Everything was white, like comforters, white towels. The whole room was just beautiful. Bathroom, I think the hotel had only been open a couple weeks. I was on a business meeting. I was sick. I had a high fever. I was so sick. I had run back to my hotel room, and I wanted to just lay down, take some emergency, try to get better. I had a really important meeting that night. And so I go into my room, and I have this emergency. I don't know if you've taken that. It's like a powder that you take. It's got all kinds of vitamins in it. It makes us feel like we just did something healthy for ourselves. And so I grab this package. It's pink, and I look around the room, and they had given me a basket with all of these like special like whatever treats and stuff, and I grab a bottle of water and I open it up and I pour the emergency in there, and as I'm pouring it in there, I read it's Perrier, and I'm like, well, cool, I like it's bubble water, it's Perrier. So anyways, I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it starts to bubble. It's bubbling up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like fizzing over. So there was a catalyst. It was a catalytic moment. That emergency mixed with that sparkling water was not a good thing. So I take it, looking around, it's all white room. I put it on my nose because I'm going to try to like stop it. But at that point, it's like, all I'm thinking is it's starting to come out my nose. I swear, my eyeballs, it's like my mouth. I'm like this. And so I'm like, oh my God. So I'm thinking, here's what's going through my mind. This is going to go up into my brain and kill me. And I'm going to end up in that book, The Darwin Awards for people who died doing stupid things. She died mixing Perrier with emergency, and she held it with her mouth. And so I'm like, I got to run. So I have the bottle, and I'm like running to the bathroom. I get to the bathroom. I take my mouth off it, and it explodes all over the bathroom. There's pink everywhere. It looks like a crime scene. It's like everywhere. I'm standing in the middle of the bathroom like, oh my God. And all I can think of is like, I just want to take a nap. I'm so sick. So I like stop, rinse and clean the pink off the towel so I don't have to pay for them, and just, oh my gosh. So when I think catalyst, that's the moment I think about in my life. And I would like you to think about that moment too as we think about catalyst. That there's just this moment in our life that just went, whoa, and just nose, eyes. I don't know if something can come out of your eyes, but I think it did. So catalyst. So in my life, as you know, and that's the question we were asked, like what in your life has been a powerful catalyst? Well, hands down, the most important and powerful catalyst in my life has been faith. It's been faith. Now, I want to talk a little bit about faith and how it actually works in my life. It would take weeks for us to go into an exhaustive teaching on faith, just theological teaching on faith, be a wonderful study, but it would take us so long to kind of unpack the biblical definition of faith. But I'm just going to talk about how it works in my life. The Bible gives a really great definition of faith in Hebrews chapter 11. Will you turn there? It's page 822 if you have one of our paper Bibles. It says that faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. It's confidence and assurance. And as it pertains to God, in my language, in the Juliapedia world, which I think my family should all read that. It's the Juliapedia version of what this is. I like to say that faith is confident assurance and trust in who God is, in what he says, and what he does. Just, that's what, as it pertains to God, it's just confident assurance and trust in who God is, what he says, and what he does. Now, how many of you know that faith, it sounds great, like people will say, well, you just got to have faith. People, like, you just got to have faith. And you're like, what does that mean? Can you go, okay, I'm going to walk away. What does it mean you just have to? How many of you have had someone say, you just got to have faith? Yeah, I know. And you walk away, what does that mean? Well, for me, there are three components of faith. There's knowledge, there's belief, and there's trust. All three work together in the process of faith. So I'm going to give you just a real life example of what that looks like. How many of you have or own an as seen on TV product? How many of you own a lot of them? Come on, my hand is still up. Right? We own the Flex Hose, the Flex Seal, the Kimura Body Shaper. We own all of those little creams that make all the little bumps go away. We own all of that stuff. I love as seen on TV products. And when somebody gives one to me, I'm like, I'm so excited because I've probably seen the commercial. You can make a meal in 15 minutes in the Instant Pot. I saw it on television. Well, just that has three components to that whole process of as seen on TV. One is knowledge, product knowledge. You're watching TV, they're telling you about it, they're showing you, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, they literally wrapped that boat in duct tape and now they're taking it out on the lake. Babe, you need it. We need it. How many have ever tried to duct tape something wet? And so here's the second part of that. I believe you. I believe you. If you tell me things, not only do I believe you, but I walk away and tell 4 more people as if it's the truth. That is my personality. I just believe you. They're so good. And so I believe you. And then thirdly, the third component is that I decide to pick up my phone or get on the computer and buy it quickly in the next 15 minutes because I can get an extra one and all I got to do is pay $12.99 in shipping and then I can give that to somebody. So you definitely want to have 2, not just 1, right? Because hurry, you got to do it. So you begin to take that step of faith and then all of a sudden you have the flexible hose sitting in your yard and you're trying to figure out, like, did that really work? Some of those products actually work and some of them you just, like I just bought that glove that you pet your dog with and it's supposed to take all the hair away. Doesn't work on a cattle dog, so might work on some other kind of dog. But I bought it, and I'm like, oh, it's as seen on TV. It must work. It must work. And so so here's the deal. That's television. If you don't watch television, they've made it even more simple. There's a major supermarket in town, and if you walk by, when you're going to the checkout stand, there's a whole wall of as seen on TV products. You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about? Okay, the whole wall is there. As seen on TV, as seen on TV, as seen on TV, as seen on TV, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like a candy store. And so I stand there a lot. You'll probably, if you ever see me there, just say hi and smile. We'll have some kind of a skills class for that or something one day. And so, and so I was walking by that the other day, and I was like, okay, I just have to bring some examples of how hard this is. Okay, this is the 48-in-1 socket wrench. Now, here's what I know. It's like 48 different tools. It's got a smart design, and it's got a rubberized grip for comfort and control. I believe this. My husband needs this. He needs this. This is amazing. It's all in one. But here's okay, how many of you need the Hurricane Spin Duster? Now, here's the deal. It's the #1 bestseller. Congratulations. You're the #1 best-selling spinning mop. That's amazing. And you got a free extension cord for ceilings and fans. So that's like extra bonus. And so here's one. And somebody at the first service said, after you showed that, I couldn't pay attention anymore. So, because it was the bacon wave. And they said they couldn't. They're like, honestly, all I kept thinking of was bacon. All morning. And so this is great because here's the product. I did that last time too. It's like French or something. It makes crispy and tasty bacon. So Sharon, this is like you and Dawn need this because you like your bacon crispy. But it separates bacon from the unwanted grease, which means it's healthy. So I feel good about buying bacon. So we're having bacon. This one is awesome, the bacon wave. It's great. I love it. It cooks up to 14 slices in case you want to eat that many. me. And so this is like as seen on TV, can't ever have enough bacon. And then this one, I actually own one of these. I bought one or two of these different versions. It's called the egglets. You can crack, boil, and pop, and you no longer have to struggle with an eggshell. Is that like amazing? This is wonderful. And so, yeah, I actually did buy this as seen on TV. I don't know if this one works, but we might have to try, let's try that with our bacon, babe. And so, so anyways, so as seen on TV, products, you have product knowledge, you believe it, and then you take that act of faith and you buy it, which is so amazing. I'm gonna set this over here, so stop thinking about that bacon. Some of you are still thinking about that bacon, right? So knowledge, belief. Now my husband is not prone to buying as seen on TV. He has knowledge, doesn't necessarily believe it unless I'm convincing him. So he's probably not gonna buy it. How many of you know that you can have knowledge and belief, but not faith? You can have knowledge, but not faith. Churches in America are full of knowledge. We're praying that they become full of faith. There's so much knowledge in churches in the United States and the Western world, actually. Do you know that in certain countries, when you do mission work, they might have one page of the Bible? Just one page. And hopefully it's not like an Old Testament page, you know? It's like the Numbers or, you know, Deuteronomy. But they have one page, and on that one page, mixed with their faith, their whole lives are transformed, like villages are transformed. And we have the Bible in every version. At the push of a button on our phone, it talks to us. It groups the scriptures together for us, so we only hear all the scriptures on love. You know, it just, there's so many things. We have so much access. We have so much knowledge. But we don't have a lot of faith sometimes. And some of that knowledge, we go, yeah, I believe it. You know, I believe it. I believe that God can do that. I believe that God heals. I believe that. And so we have knowledge and belief, but we don't have faith. I believe that God can save my coworker, but we don't have the faith to actually have the conversation, right? I believe that God can change my wife, but we don't have the faith to forgive and begin to walk in kindness. There's so much knowledge and belief, but we don't have a lot of faith. And I think for me, that was my story. Like, that's my story. I was brought up by some really good parents who thought it was important for me to go to church. And so even though we were dirt poor, my dad would paint the school and do work so that I could go to that private school. I had so much knowledge of God. And so when I was in high school, my friends would come and try to tell me about Jesus. I had Christian friends. And I would go, no, God, you're talking to the wall. Like, I went to, like, I know about God. You know, I've had my confirmation and I've done all this stuff. I know about God. And so you don't need to talk to me about it. It doesn't have to look the way you look. And I got to tell you that I probably lost friends because I was that argumentative friend. And you probably don't want to get in an argument with me because I'm going to figure out a way to win. At that point, it's not about eternity or salvation. I'm just going to win this argument. And so how many have friends like that? Sorry. So I was that person. So I had a lot of knowledge and belief, but not a lot of faith. So at 18, I find myself with a baby. And my husband, because I'd gotten married early, just decided that there was another life that he wanted with someone else. So he left a 2-month-old baby. And at that point, one of those Christian friends decided to boldly take a step and say, Julie, your life is a mess. You need to change something. And at that point, I believed I needed help, and I believed that God was probably an option for me. And so I prayed and I asked God to help me. I prayed and I gave my life to Jesus. And I was in church for a little bit of time, long enough to know a little bit about the Bible as it related to this new relationship that I had with God. But I just couldn't believe that I could live that life. I just couldn't believe. I could believe that God loved me and that he sent his son to die for me. But I just couldn't believe that I could ever do that, right? So walked away from the church, little baby in tow. 2 years down the line, I'm spinning. I find myself in a community of darkness, selling drugs on a really large scale. I'm at an airport in California getting ready to fly on a stolen plane to Florida. My mom forces me to leave my 2-year-old. I'm taking him. It's Florida. It's Disneyland. And she's like, he's not getting on that plane. So I leave the kid. I pack up my knowledge and belief and get on a plane and start flying across the country. Now, back then, when you're running drugs at that scale, you don't file a flight plan. You don't do any of the things necessary to, let anyone know what you're necessarily doing. And truth be told, we were playing both sides of the field with law enforcement and with drug people. So you can't get any worse or scarier than that. So we're flying across the country. And all of a sudden, we get hit with this freak electrical storm. And all of a sudden, we get hit with the freak electrical part of that storm. Boom. And our instrument landing system, the thing that allows you to land the plane without seeing, goes out. So we're in this storm. We have no landing system. Visibility is down to like 50 feet, meaning essentially we can't see anything. The FAA, whoever they are telling all the planes, you need to land, you need to land. Here's the nearest airport. The nearest airport for us was this airport, tiny little airport, middle of swamplands, had this huge fence at the end of the runway, so you had to come in and then you had to drop it's a really difficult airport to land even when you can see. But when you don't have any instruments, there's a storm, electricity, and you can't see anything, it's pretty much impossible. And so we got in this holding pattern, kept trying it, and then we're up in the sky waiting for our next turn, and we literally run out of gas. And so now we're falling from the sky. And it's a 7-passenger plane. It's me and 2 pilots. They're pilots, both of them were from Columbia. They're in the front and I'm in the back, and I thought, this trip sounded like fun. It's not fun anymore. I'm not having fun. I think I'll go home. But I'm falling from the sky. I'm falling from the sky. And we know that pretty much it's thunder and lightning. We're done. I know I'm going to die. This is it. And so I start to think about knowledge and belief, right? I start to think about what I know about God. And I'm like, okay, I know that God helped me the last time. I know that God can do some miracles. I know that he sent his son Jesus to die for me. I know that I'm saved. But God, can you just please help me? Can you help the planes falling from the sky? Can you do a miracle? And all of a sudden we can have gas in our tank. I swear if you do this, I promise you, I'm bargaining. 50%, God, I'll give you 50%. Like, I'll totally give you all of our drug money from this sale if you just let us land this plane. And it's a lot, God, it's a lot. And so I'm really sorry we stole this plane. Really sorry. And so I'm bargaining with God and I'm going down. And at some point, like knowledge and belief, like, Julie, what do you know? And what do you believe? What do you know? And what do you believe? And the pilots are fighting and they're just doing their thing up there. And I'm in the back and I'm just like, I know that you love me. I know that you died for my sins. I know that you died for my sins. I know there's eternity. I know this. I believe this. I believe this. And at that point, just faith, just like, boom, it just exploded like that emergency in that Perrier water. It just exploded in my life. And all of a sudden I thought, I'm good with this. I'm good with this. And I say, God, I trust you. I don't even care if I die. I know the promise that you have for me and for my family. I just want to be with you in heaven. God, I don't care if I die today, even if this plane crashes into 1,000,000 pieces. I just want to be with you in heaven. I want to be with you. And at that moment, the catalyst of faith changed everything. Faith changes the rules of the game, people. And I can tell you that this most unbelievable peace and joy fell over me. So the plane is crashing falling out of the sky. And I was in church for about 4.5 minutes, long enough in that little teeny Assembly of God church in my old hometown. And the guy used to stand up with an organ and just start singing these old songs that I am sitting there, and all of a sudden, songs start to well out of my heart, right? I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river. And the two pilots are like, shut the bleep, 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 bleep. And I'm like, I've got joy like a fountain. And I'm like, bless the Lord, oh my soul. And it's like, I keep falling in love with him over and over and over and over. And you know, and all the old people are like, I love that song, right? And so they're just like, shut up. And so they start fighting because like that, now things are in that, the atmosphere in that plane, right? And so they start fighting. One of them physically knocks out the other one. And I'm like, great, knock out the pilot. We did think we needed him, you know? And so, but I'm just in the back, and joy is just, who's falling from the sky and joy is overflowing in their heart? Like what rules are you playing in that game? Right? And I'm just like, all right, I'm just like, this is great. If I go to heaven, like, God, you got my kid, promise, me and my whole household, that kid is cool. And so I'm just like, whew. And so all of a sudden, as I'm falling from the sky, all of a sudden, thank you, darling, thank you. I see that you did, love you. I'm falling from the sky, sorry, water break. And I hear the Lord say, when this plane hits you, hit it back. And I went, okay, right? Because I don't know that in my lifetime I've ever heard anything that clear. When this plane hits you, Julie, hit it back. And back in the day, remember there was an old song by Pat Benatar, hit me with your best shot, right? Because I'm just like, God, seriously, my destiny, the enemy knows my destiny. Like, how many times is there a freak electrical storm that hits your plane in such a way that you lose your landing system when there's no visibility to land in an airport that no one can land in the middle of the night on a drug run? Take your best shot. Take it. Because God said, when this plane hits me, I'm going to hit it back. How many know that the enemy knows who you are? He's so afraid. Hit me with your best shot, because God said I'm supposed to hit you back. And so I don't know anything about emergency processes and planes, but I travel with a lot of clothes. For those of you that know me, probably know that. And so I go and I gather all my clothes, and I decide in my brain, I'm going to set them all on my lap, and then I put my feet up and I grab under the seat, okay? That apparently is something that you actually do. It's like a thing. But I didn't know that then. So I'm following what the Lord said. And so I just think when this plane lands, when it hits me, I'm going to hit it back. So we hit the ground. There's trees. And this plane is bouncing. It's the loudest I think I can ever remember anything being in my life. But I just know what I'm supposed to do. And so I'm so filled with joy. I'm just like, I hit you back, man. Hit me. I'm from LA. I'll hit you back. And so all of a sudden, like, it's just rumbling and things are hitting me, and every single time just hitting it back, I'm hitting it back. And then the plane stops. And there's a quiet. And I'm like, I'm still here because my shoe is stuck in the seat. I can't. And I hear God say, move. And I'm like, can't. My shoe is stuck in the thing. I'm not leaving my shoe. And so all of a sudden, somebody undoes my seatbelt. And the next thing I know, I am sitting I'm out on the wing of the plane. And the Lord's like, go, move, run. So I slide down. Now I'm in a swamp. I'm in a swamp. And I don't have a shoe. I'm missing a shoe. So when you're in shock, weird things happen. And so I just take off and I turn around, and the pilot has the other pilot that he knocked out. And so I'm like, well, thank you for getting me out of the plane. He goes, I didn't get you out of the plane. I was going to get him and come back and get you. So we actually get out, and the plane explodes and catches on fire. And it just so happens, how many of you know just so happens, always happens in our lives? There was a little church in the swamp, and it was late at night, and they were having church. And they saw a kid snuck out of his class or church and saw the plane go down. Now, thank God for the rebellion of that kid. He was not going to church. Something fell from heaven. And so he goes in, gets everybody, they come, they rescue. I remember somebody putting me over their shoulders and literally carrying me out. And so I'm laying on a couch in one of the little houses, just one room, just shack. And this lady is just rubbing my head, and she's like, baby, what are you doing here? Do you know, like, who you are? She just begins speaking destiny. Like, God has his hand on your life. Who are you? And she just begins praying over me. Like, I don't know if anyone's ever prayed over me like that before, but I'm laying on the couch and I'm thinking I'm dead and I'm dying. I just fell out of the sky. And so but I'm like, oh, God, I don't know, but this must be what being really hurt feels like. And so she's praying over me, and eventually it takes a while, but the ambulance finds us, takes us to the hospital. The other two guys were kind of messed up, but an hour later, walked out of that hospital with what they called a bruise. They called a bruise. So the next day, I got to get my shoe, my clothes. So I go back to the house, kid. That's why I always love those kind of sparky kids. I'm like, hey, can you take me out to the crash site? I can get my shoe. So he's like, yeah, I'll take you. So he takes us out, and while I'm out there, there's an investigator with the FAA, and he's just recording all the stuff of the crash. And so I'm not worried because we kind of played, but not worried about it. But he does say, who are you? I'm this person. Were you on the plane? Yes, I was. Just came to get my shoe. Can you find it? And he's like, yeah, you weren't. Where were you sitting? And I said, oh, well, I always sit in this particular seat on this particular plane. And I know I was left side facing forward. And he goes, no, you were not. And I said, no, yes, I am, because even here at this church, at Movement Church, I sit in the same seat every single time. And so I'm like, no, I was. And he goes, no, you're not. So he takes me over, and he goes, this is where that seat is. And it was literally a tree. It wasn't, he goes, lady, if you were here, we would not be talking. There isn't a seat here. There's a tree there. So I'm like, I was still sitting in that seat. And so I get my stuff, because I am that friend. Don't tell me something I don't want. And so I come home, and I would like to say that immediately from that point, I walked back to California preaching the gospel, but it took a while. But the rules of the game changed, and within a couple months, I was able to get free, because it wasn't so easy to get free from organizations that are like that. And so it was almost an impossibility. It would have been previously impossible for me to get free from that lifestyle and with everything that I knew. But a catalyst actually accelerates a process, and it enables you to do things that were before impossible but now are possible. And so within a couple months, I was still struggling with some of that, like trying to get some of that old thinking out. But God changed the rules of the game. With a couple months, I was sitting in church, and I was actually really singing, I got peace like a river, oh yeah. And so I was singing it like in church, totally different way, but the first couple times I was in church, I just would bawl, like they'd start to play that song, and you can't just turn to your neighbor and go, no, you don't understand, I was just falling out of the sky in a Colombian drug lord plane, and I was singing that song, and then I didn't die, and I'm here. Like, nobody knows. You don't know why the person next to you was crying. You have no idea. I mean, look at me. I am a pastor. Like, people who knew me then would never believe it. I was bad. I'm a pastor. And sometimes when you see people from your past, like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm a pastor. They're like, oh, cool. But I'm still me. So like so it gives you a lot of context for who I am, I think, to know that. But anyways, it just, faith changes the rules of the game. It allows you to do things that were previously impossible. So I want you to turn in your Bibles. I just want to read this scripture. It's in Matthew, and it is chapter 17, verse 20. And it's Jesus talking, and he's talking to his disciples. They were actually having kind of a moment where he was asking them to do something they thought was tough. And he says, truly I tell you, which when I read that, I always hear Jesus going, no, seriously. Right, that's what he's saying. If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. How much faith did they need? They needed a mustard seed. but they had the ability. He's saying within you is the ability, with faith, you can literally move an entire mountain with your words. So he's giving them a really vivid example of how powerful the catalyst of faith is. So if I set a bottle of Perrier on a table and I said, explode! Okay. Explode, right? And then I add the catalyst of emergency, explode, right? So he's saying this is what faith does. Faith allows you, the faith that you have, the tiniest bit of it, you can literally do what is seemingly impossible to you. Hebrews 11:6 says, without faith, it's impossible to please God because anyone who comes to him must believe that he is, that he exists, and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. And so one of the things that really pleases the heart of God is when we know about him, when we believe him, and when we come to him. He says, Julia, I don't have faith. Like, I'm not you. Like, I've been trying, right? I just don't have the faith to believe that. It's just, I don't know how to get it. Like, how do you get it? Where do you go? Is there like a prescription for it, right? And so it's hard because it seems like this very intangible thing. Like, do you either have it or you don't? And so you get that a lot. Like, people will come up. I asked Haley, while I was preparing for this message, I asked Haley, so like, tell me what, when people come up for prayer, like, does this make sense to you? And she says, oh yeah, there's so many people who come up for prayer and they go, I don't know how to do what was just talked about. Like, the hardest thing for me is I just don't think I have the faith. I just don't think I can believe it. I just don't think I have what it takes. And so I thought, oh, that's awesome. Well, I want you to know that when you think about those three components of faith, this is not a prescription, but I do believe there are things that we can do to help increase and help us grow in our faith. The first thing with knowledge, Romans 10:17 says faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. We can learn about God. Learning about him does expand our vision and build our expectation, right? Faith comes by hearing. That means listening, that means reading, and that means hanging out with people who talk about Jesus, right? Because you're hanging out with me today, and I can tell you, you have a lot more faith if you were ever falling from the sky in an airplane with a bunch of drug lords. You would have faith to believe that you could not die, right? Because you're hearing, right? You're hearing. Second, belief. There's a story in Mark chapter 9 where a father has a son who's just demon-possessed, and the disciples, nobody could help him. People were praying for him, and no one could help him. And he's having a conversation with Jesus, and Jesus is telling him, all things are possible with faith. Like, faith makes impossible things possible. And the father just looks at Jesus, and he goes, I believe, help my unbelief. Just, can you help me in the areas that I don't believe? And I believe the second thing you can do is just ask. Because God will give generously. Because this is his heart. God wants you to believe in who he is, what he says, and what he does. God wants you to believe in a way that propels your life into action and helps you to see impossible things happen. And lastly, in trust. 2 Corinthians 5:7, commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him and he will do it. Commit your way to the Lord. Commit your way to the Lord. It's an action word. Commit your way. It's not just in my heart I'm committed. No, I'm committed. I'm falling from the sky and I'm like, God, we're cool. You can kill me if you want, but I'm going to be with you. I'm committed at this point. And so in my last 2 minutes of life, I think I'll sing a song. sometimes I do believe that we're asking for the wrong thing. And again, this isn't a prescription, but I do believe sometimes we're asking for boldness to speak to that person that sits next to us at work. And we really just need faith. We need faith to believe that what we're going to say is going to make a difference. We really have faith that if they don't receive Jesus, things aren't going to go so well for them in eternity. Sometimes I think we ask for patience because our husband or wife or kids are driving us crazy. But I think sometimes we need the faith to forgive and be kind, even though in our hearts we've struggled to really believe that it's going to make any difference. But God can give us the faith to know that if I pick up that phone and I say, hey, kid, I know I've been coming down on you and really disappointed in you lately, and I expressed that, and I'm sorry. I believe in you. I love you. You're a champion. You're a good person. And people will go, yeah, but if I do it, then they're just continue doing what they're doing. Faith. See, sometimes you're asking for something, but what you really need is faith. You really need to believe that that kid that you're looking at can rise up and be amazing. It's going to change the way that you respond. It's going to change the rules of your game. It's going to be a catalyst in your life. And I think there's so many people sitting in here. You have a lot of knowledge. Maybe you believe some of it about Jesus, but you've never committed to taking that step of faith and saying, you're my Lord. All of my ways. Some of you hear things about, like Pastor Jeff will talk about walking in the prophetic or getting a word from God or having the Holy Spirit, just invade your space. And you know it and you might believe it, but you've never said, God, do it to me. Do it to me. Oh, man. Maybe you need faith. Maybe you need faith. So I just don't want to leave this moment without giving you an opportunity to have that airplane crashing, Mentos emergency moment in your life. Would you stand with me? And I'm going to ask the worship band to come out. First and foremost, if you have knowledge and you have belief, but you have never said, Jesus, you're my Lord, I want you all to bow your heads and close your eyes. You're going to have a Mentos moment in your life right now. Jesus, I have never made you Lord of my life, but I know and I believe. But now today, I want to make you my Lord. Can you raise your hand? Yes, all over the place. All over the place. The game changes. The game changes now. Because faith is rising up in your heart. And let me tell you, as you walk away, nothing is the same. There is something set in motion in your life that will be forever different. God bless you. And some of you, just those of you that just raise your hand, just continue to have that conversation with God. He's doing stuff in your heart right now. Some of you, your dream has died and you just don't have the faith to resurrect it. You actually feel like the plane crashed on your dream. Raise your hand. That one I got about Tuesday. The Lord told me that some of your dreams have crashed and you don't have the faith anymore to see it or believe it. Yeah. God's resurrecting your dreams and he's going to let you have faith. He's going to help you to not only want it, but see it, feel it, and know that it's possible. By faith, God is resurrecting dreams. And how many of you need to make a phone call that says to someone, God, I forgive you because I have the faith to believe that God can restore our relationship. I believe some of you got to call your parents. So raise your hand. You got to call your parents. You got to make a phone call to that kid Or maybe to your ex. Yeah.